to tonight's game is a little like being a doomsday prepper. You're hoping that the end isn't near, that you get a chance to live to see another day, but at the same time, you got that can of beans in the first aid kit in the safe just in case today is the day. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I ain't trying to be a downer, but that's reality, folks, as your Minnesota Timberwolves and mine find themselves down at 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals with the improbable, but not impossible, but improbable task of winning 3 games in a row against what is arguably the best team in the National Basketball Association. I hope the Wolves got their climbing gear ready because this is one big-ass tall task they are facing. But the good thing is they don't have to win 3 games tonight. They just have to win Game 5 as the Wolves look to stay alive against the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. Tip-off is about 60 minutes away, but for the next 30 minutes, we're here to vibe with you. Maybe cry with you, hopefully continue to ride with you as the Wolves look to keep their championship dreams alive. My name is Max Fuller, a.k.a. Seth Frogan, a.k.a. Max Nicholson, a.k.a. a million other things. We are awaiting the arrival of the one, the only Dr. Parker Fox the fifth, getting stuck in traffic. I wonder if he was over across the river watching the Minnesota Frost parade around with their second Walter Cup championship. We'll have to ask him when he gets here. But in the meantime, we're still getting ready for Game 5 tonight. It's do or die for your Minnesota Timberwolves after what was, calling it a head scratcher of a game is, that's the understatement of the year. I got Brett Blakemore on the 1s and 2s. Even he's not even a basketball guy, and even he's nodding his head vociferously like, that game was crazy.
You can feel the nerves just in the building. I can imagine Wolves fans around like, it is nervy tonight. It's nervy time. But you know what? How do you eat a whale, Max?
I don't know, Brett.
One bite at a time.
There we go.
Come on.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
I like that. I'm going to steal that as Dr. Parker Fox the fifth. It feels like forever, but we're reunited at last, Parker. And it's probably a good thing that you weren't at the post game or after last game because, we would have killed your vibe after to your girl Taylor Heisey and the all-star Minnesota Frost hoisted their second Walter Cup championship, and B, because Howlin with the homies would have turned into crying with the crew because we probably just would have sobbed for 45 minutes straight.
Yeah, man, I didn't want to be a part of that. I did watch the game. We'll talk about all of that. But first of all, shout out to Taylor and her team downtown St. Paul tonight celebrating the Cup. Super proud of them.
Is that where you just were?
Yeah, I wasn't. I dropped her off. I dropped her off. So I took our part.
Have fun at your parade, honey.
Yeah, right. Have fun celebrating again. So no, super proud of them. But tonight's Wolves night, man.
Yeah.
And I'm fired up. We've talked a lot about how we're feeling about this game and how we filled out this series, and I think there's a lot of things to discuss. But honestly, Max, I'm pretty optimistic about tonight.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the way the Wolves played last game. We'll discuss Julius Randle and how he needs to be better. But I think that there was some good momentum from last game. Yeah, you didn't win the game. But so many times in sports, you want to talk about the process versus the product.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you need the product of winning 4 games out of 7 to win a series. So you got to find ways to win. But I thought the process of how we went about the last game was really solid. And I know we'll get into all that, but I'm honestly feeling pretty optimistic going into Game 5 here tonight.
I think there's a lot of things that went right for the Minnesota Timberwolves in that last game, and I think it's worth reiterating. There's obviously 2 minds of it. You can look at this in a negative way, glass half empty, or a glass half full thing, but there were so many little odd things in the way that the game played out, and even more so when you dig into the stats. I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating. The Wolves led Game 4 in rebounds, assists, points off turnovers, fast break points, points in the paint, second chance points, free throw attempts, free throw makes, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw percentage. They just didn't lead in the one crucial stat, which is points scored in general. But if you're looking at it from a glass half full perspective, Parker, the Wolves dominated a lot of aspects of that game. They just weren't quite able to crack that seal, if you will. The Thunder kind of held them at bay for most of the game. I think they tied it up 79-79 during the third quarter at one point, but the Wolves were never able to retake that lead, and the Thunder were just kind of able to keep them at arm's length. I think I heard Britt Robson describe it as the Thunder defense was able to dictate the way the Wolves played offense, but the Wolves defense wasn't able to do the same.
Yeah, I think you're right, Max. I think there's so many encouraging things if you're a coaching staff and you're going back and watching that film that you want to talk about, that you want to be about, going into this game tonight. But then there's also some things that you look at and you're like, hey, we have to find a way to be better in several categories. And I think one of those categories is the turnovers. It's something that has kind of plagued this Timberwolves team, in general throughout the regular season a little bit. And then we obviously saw it in game 4, 21 turnovers. Yes, Anthony Edwards has the ball in his hand a lot. Yes, Julius Randle has the ball in his hand a lot. So that there's going to be some residual turnovers effect, but to combine for 10 is just too many. I think you have to try to find a way to keep that below 10, keep it at an 8 or a 7 number. You go back to like a Russell Westbrook, who was, those triple-double machines in his prime, and he was so good, but he was turning all over the ball so much.
Right.
And even LeBron James, who was, leads the league in, the history of the league in turnovers. It's like, it's going to happen when you have the ball in your hand so much. And this, Oklahoma City Thunder team, they play really hard defense and they're very physical and they're very sound. So it's going to happen, but you just got to find a way to be conscious about it. You got to find a way to really take care of the ball, especially when you're the 2 stars, and keep that number below a combined 10. And then, secondly, we've talked about Julius Randle with the turnovers. You don't win this game. You don't win any more games when you're playing good teams like this if he doesn't show up and he doesn't, really come to play. And you have to give some of these other guys a lot of credit. Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels. You got to give them credit for stepping up. Those 3 guys combined for over 65 points, and I thought were absolutely excellent, going into that game 4. But the turnovers, I think, are something that when you watch on film, and I think the coaching staff is really going to highlight, is taking care of the ball, being sound with the ball, and just playing through physicality. You're going to see a very physical, you're going to see a very upbeat game tonight in Oklahoma City, going back to their place. They feel like they have all of the momentum. I think they're big favorites. I really haven't looked at the line too much. I think they're 8.5 or 8.5 point favorite. So it's like they're going to have a lot of juice going into this one. And one of the ways that you can really, kind of get at them is to take care of the ball and be solid with the ball in your hands, because 20 is too many. You're not going to win these tight games with 20 turnovers.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I mean, that was the number one thing going into this series, was taking care of the ball. This Thunder team has been killing teams all season. It's part of the reason they've only lost 14 games. Part of the reason that they've beaten so many teams by double digits is because they're so good at hawking that ball on defense, at creating extra opportunities for themselves, and the Wolves just keep giving them more. I mean, even if you have 17 turnovers in a game like that,
different game.
It's a completely different game, because you ended up only losing by a possession anyway. So the Wolves absolutely have to take care of the ball. That's got to be number 1 with a bullet on that list, because that has been what's killing them most of all throughout this series.
Yeah, and then I think the second bullet you have to hit down is the rebounding bullet.
Yeah.
I think it's something that you have to look at it as a Timberwolves team, and you have to say, hey, I feel like interiorly we have the advantage. I feel like we have the advantage in Julius's matchup. I feel like we have the advantage in Rudy's matchup. We have to be able to rebound the ball. We have to be able to do it well. And to, I don't even know exactly what it was last game. I think they ended up winning the rebounding battle.
It was 41-36, but I was going to bring this up. It seems the Thunder's 36 had more weight than the Wolves' 41. Even though the Wolves got statistically more, the Thunder's made theirs count.
I think they did, especially when, like those 2 I mentioned, Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, they're physical, they have size, they have the ability to dominate the glass. You have to do that on both ends, offensively and defensively. And those are 2 guys that I think you look to tonight in the front court that you say, if we're going to win this game, if we're going to find a way to win this game, they don't need to be, Rudy doesn't need to be a 25 and 20 like he had that one game against the Lakers, but he's got to be in the double digits in both of those categories, I think, tonight, rebounding and points, if you want to see a Wolves victory.
Absolutely. And I think Rudy's scoring is imperative as well, because obviously Rudy Rudy scoring helps him stay on the floor, and the Wolves are a significantly better defense when Rudy is on the floor. Like, Naz Reid comes in, you have more versatility offensively, but then it seems like the Thunder can kind of do whatever they want in the paint. So I do think that's kind of like one of those synergy things like we've talked about before, defense feeding into offense. I think Rudy being able to get involved offensively, however that is, whether that is getting boards or actually putting the ball in the hoop, he's got to find a way to stay on the floor, because towards the end of these games, he hasn't really been on the court all too much because he has been, a non-factor offensively.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I know a lot of people will look at him and be like, what is he out there doing? Well, like, he really does just disturb a lot of things interior in the paint, man. Like, you have a guy like Shea who doesn't want to shoot the three-point ball. He wants to, operate in the mid-range. He wants to operate around the rim. He's second in the playoffs behind Anthony Edwards in layups attempted, shooting that at 52%, so not a great percent. I think you got to give a guy like Rudy Gobert a lot of credit for being in there. Sometimes when you see those kind of guys, and I know it throughout my career, when you get in there and you see 7-1 with length and shot block ability, it spooks you out a little bit. And there's really two ways to go about it. You got to try to go up and finish hard. You got to try to make the pass. And yes, Shea's excellent at drawing fouls, and it's something that he's going to continue to do. But if you're Rudy Gobert, you have to find a way to stay out of foul trouble and just use your size, use your length, and be able to rebound out of it. That's another skill. When you're trying to affect shots, blocking wise, or even just like verticality, we call it a Hibbert. Roy Hibbert was excellent at this. He used to just use his size and strength and just put his hands up in the air and wall up, we used to call it. You have to do that, and then you have to rebound out of it. So I think that's something where I look at Rudy Gobert tonight. He might not be some crazy points and rebounds number, but how can you affect the defensive end and make life difficult for guys like Shea and a guy like J-Dub, who was excellent in Game 4,
or Chet Holmgren, who has also been. Chet Holmgren I think this is the best offensively I've ever seen him play, and I'm not an elite OKC Thunder mind. You're way more familiar with this game, but it seems like his offensive game is rising to its peak of its power so far throughout his career at the perfect time for the Thunder.
Yeah, I thought Chet was absolutely excellent in Game 4. He was 9 of 14 from the floor for 21 points. So that's a +7 right there when we talk about how many points you score versus the field goals you take. That's excellent. You always want to try to be positive in that category. You add that on to 4 offensive rebounds, something he does really well, and three blocks. Protecting the paint, something he does at an elite level. I think you're right, Max. He's such a versatile talent when it comes to what this Thunder team kind of need from him. They don't need him to be a primary scorer, which he's been in his college and high school career. They don't need him to be a ball handler. They don't need him to be, whatever that may be. They need him to be excellent in his role. And I think he's really found that throughout this, playoffs, and he's found it throughout the season. And you look at what he did in Game 4, you got to tip the cap to the hometown kid coming home and having an excellent game. So if you're the Wolves, you got to try to counter that. You need to try to put size and strength on him. He's a scrawnier body. He's a guy that doesn't take physicality as well as some of his counterparts. So if I'm the Wolves, I look to really attack him. But no, man, Chet is one of those guys, and I've played against him for years, and I've played with him in pickup and runs for years. There's something that just works inside his body when it comes to blocking shots and affecting shots. And if you're Anthony Edwards and you're going in there to try to finish around the rim, you have to go in there with ill intent and try to put one on his head, because if you don't, he's so good at blocking shots. I've had my shot blocked by him,
which is crazy because you're huge.
Way too many times, man. Well, he's a lot bigger than me too, even. So you got to give a guy like that credit. I think he's kind of that. We talk, Max, so much about the third guy, right? Who is that third guy who is stepping up, whether that be Chet or Lou Dort or Hartenstein. I think Chet's really kind of solidified himself as that guy. You look at the scoring for Game 4. Jalen Williams 34, Shea 40, Chet 21. That's quick math, but that's 95 points of their 128 from 3 guys. And you converse that and you go to the other side and you look at the Timberwolves. Who are our 3 guys? Okay, Julius, Anthony Edwards, and then fill in whoever you want. And those 2 only have 21. So that makes the ball game right there. And we talked about how great the Wolves were in that Game 4, and they did some really good things with some of their other guys. You need your stars to show up. So you need a Julius and you need a Anthony Edwards if you're going to try to win this basketball game tonight.
And I want to get to Julius in just a second, because obviously his game or lack thereof was one of the main talking points coming out of Game 4. But I'm actually I'm seeing in the chat here, Jason Ansari, and I actually got a similar thing from my Uber driver this morning. Jason Ansari is saying a lot of criticism about the players. Shouldn't Finchie ultimately be responsible? And even my Uber driver this morning was saying Finch is getting out coached. He's getting out coached. And I'm not an elite basketball mind. I'm not sure about the out coaching thing. What do you think, Parker?
I think there's a lot of, things in play when it comes to that question. I think that's such a broad question because
that's what I don't like that. It feels like a dangerous territory.
Well, from an outsider's point of view, you talk about coaching in the NBA and you say, okay, these guys don't really do a whole lot, right? You look at these guys and it's like, for example, LeBron, you've heard throughout his career, LeBron coaches his team, right? And that's, maybe true. He may have some effect on what his team does offensively and,
right.
Some stuff. But at the end of the day, the coaching is very key behind the scenes. There's a lot that goes in to a game that we don't see as fans, right? And it's something that I've experienced through my career is, there's so much prep and there's so much, that needs to go through a player's head when it comes to the game. And a lot of fans will get mad at a guy in a game for, whatever they think is messing up. But it could be your scout and your game plan, right? Like you could be, for example, if there's a team that really wants to get to the middle of the paint, you're going to force everything to the baseline. And hey,
right.
You might get beat a couple times, but that was your job. And maybe it was somebody else's fault that they didn't come and rotate over. So I think there's a lot of things that go into a basketball game behind the scenes that people don't really see. But does Chris Finch need to be better? I think he would tell you he needs to be better because he's not winning games, right? So at the end of the day, you look at a guy like Finch who's been the head coach of this team since the 2021-2022 season. He's comfortable here. And Mark Dagnall, who's been the Thunder's head coach since the 2020, these guys are comfortable in their roles, and it seems like they have really great game plans. I think the Wolves, some of their defensive adjustments need to be a little better, but then you can counteract that and say, hey, if you don't have 21 turnovers, maybe you don't give up so many points.
Right.
So I think there's ebbs and flows with that, and there's arguments on both sides. But to say that Chris Finch isn't doing a good job, I think is kind of silly to me.
Yeah, it seems like fans just lashing out, looking for someone to blame.
You find a scapegoat, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody to freaking get mad at.
Yeah, and you want it feels people have done this all throughout Finch's career, but the numbers speak for themselves. I think he's the winningest coach in Timberwolves history.
Probably
is he not? Or
probably.
if not, he's damn close.
Yeah.
So, and this is the second straight Western Conference Finals, and sometimes you're playing against the best team in the NBA. It's not like you're losing to a bunch of scrubs or anything like that. You're playing against the best team in the NBA, and I'm sure the Wolves' game plan includes hey, let's not try to have Jalen Williams or SGA score. They didn't want them to score 74 points. There's a reason those guys get paid the big bucks. So I'm sure Finchie and that coaching staff will have an A+ game plan for tonight. And obviously part of that game plan is going to be to get Julius Randle going. He's had basically a coin flip of a series, kind of 50-50 every other game. He's playing well. Unfortunately, last game was one of those ones he did not play well. It was 1 for 7 from the floor, 0 for 3 from 3, 5 points, 7 rebounds, and which I think is maybe even more concerning than the lack of points is just 3 assists, because Julius Randle has been such a playmaker for this team. I don't think it's a coincidence that Anthony Edwards didn't have an offensive explosion either, because we've talked about it before. It's not just Julius Randle complementing Anthony Edwards' game. It's them being in synergy with each other. And I was kind of thinking about it earlier. Tell me if I'm tripping. Do you think the key to getting Anthony Edwards going a little bit more offensively is actually to get Julius Randle going a little bit more offensively?
1,000%. I think if you're not thinking that, you're completely wrong. A basketball team doesn't work with one basketball player. It's impossible, no matter how great that basketball player is. And I know some people will be like, look what Jordan did, or this and that.
Right. Well, he was getting his ass busted until Scottie Pippen got there.
That's right, man. That's right. Because you need other guys. Defenses can just completely load up. And we've seen that throughout this playoffs, especially with that Warriors team. But what this Thunder team is doing defensively, and I've said it on this show countless times, I don't think there's a player in the history of the NBA that has as good of a first step as Anthony Edwards. I know that's a bold take, but I stand by it. I don't see anybody that can completely guard him one-on-one. You need help, and you need other guys to be involved. And once you try to involve other guys, they need to step up. So give credit to Na, Dante, and I think it was Jaden who had really great game fours. But if you're Julius and you're that kind of that Robin to the Batman, you need to be great as well. I think if you go back and look at just NBA champions and look at teams that have won, I'm obviously a big LeBron guy, and just watching kind of Kyrie by his side, and you look at just the teams that have won in the past, they've always kind of had a guy that was able to step up if the primary wasn't having a night, and maybe that wasn't even his fault. He wasn't having a night. The defense is just loading up for you. So I think throughout the season, Julius Randle has he showcased his versatility, kind of transitioning from a primary scoring option to more of a complementary role. He's been able to adapt and do different things with different kind of responsibilities. But I think he needs to step up tonight and really, like we said, he has the ball in his hands a lot. He turned it over 5 times. So that needs to be cut down. But you need to find ways to adapt and help a guy like Ant, especially when you're an older guy. You've been through it. You've played in games like this. This is a closeout game, man. This is all the marbles here. So if you don't show up, it's off to Cancun. So you got to find a way, if you're Julius Randle, to take your leadership as you are a leader. So you got to try to find a way to take that and kind of put it into playing a really solid game tonight. And I think we're going to see that from Julius tonight.
I do too.
I know there's been a couple, people talking about maybe the scuffle between him and Finch and some of the disarguments. I don't find that as something crazy. I think that's
part of playing, right?
It's Western Conference. You have a relationship with Finch. You've been here for a year now. You have a previous relationship with him. I don't think there's any bad blood about some people are asking me about, whatever transpired between those two. I think that's just competitiveness. And I think, they're close enough off the court where you can talk about that thing and have an honest relationship and conversation. And I expect Julius to come out with ill intentions tonight of being dominant and having a really solid game.
We need to see that Julius Randle, that patented bully ball back down in the paint. And what we've talked about numerous times on here, the Wolves play so well when they're playing inside out and they can get into the paint. And that's one thing that they did really well, actually, in Game 4. I thought they still did a good job of crashing the paint and making the right plays to those corners. As we've talked about, that's the Achilles heel of this Thunder defense. They're loading up on the paint, and those corners are wide open. And finally, we got guys to punish them and hit those shots that have been available to them all season, including Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who had the game of his life. 9 for 15 from the floor. He was out there hitting the threes. He was out there guarding his cousin, SGA, who was shamelessly trying to draw fouls on his own cousin. But I get it. It's cutthroat when you're trying to win a championship. Na was out there doing everything but scanning people's tickets at the door. He was just bringing the energy and played the game of his life in Game 4. Is it as simple as he's just started hitting the shots that have been available to him? Yeah,
I think anytime you have a little extra added into a game, it excites you and it gets you fired up. Na's a guy that, me and Max, obviously we've seen, do a lot of excellent things, right? Like we've seen his ability to defend. Yeah, Shea had 40 points, but when you're feeling it that night, you're kind of feeling it. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do, but I believe it wasn't a super efficient. No, it wasn't. That's exactly what I was going to get to. Yeah, it was 13 for 30 and 2 of 7 for 3. 12 of 14 at the free throw line. So it's not like he was absolutely torching his cousin there defensively. But it's a make or miss league, and we see it so much, Max. Sometimes you take better shots than others, and you take shots at the right time and the right flow of the game. And I think Na continues to always kind of do that. I feel like his basketball IQ is high in a way where he kind of understands when and when not to take a three.
And if you've never listened to him on a pregame or postgame, the way he breaks down the game, you could just tell that this man, he eats, sleeps, and breathes basketball.
He understands it at a high level. He's trying to help this team win. He's trying to impact winning in any way he can, and sometimes it's just not falling in. So I was glad to see him, have a couple drop in there, in Game 4, and hopefully look for Game 5 tonight to have him come off the bench ready to shoot the ball again, because he's a guy that we need to continue to help this offense flow and to help shots go through the rim.
And speaking of guys that have been helping the offense flow, and obviously he's been doing this since he got here, Mike Conley, he's had I think he has the best plus minus of any player on the team right now when it comes to the Wolves. And obviously he's a little bit of an older guy. He's not out there for the amount of minutes like the rest of the starters are, but he's had a really good series, and I think he's just had a really good calming effect like he always does on this team, and has been playing some really clean basketball, being the fact that he has helped limit the turnovers when he's out there and help the offense flow a little bit more. I get that he's an older guy, but this could be, potentially his last game of his career. Do you think we see a little bit more Mike Conley out there tonight? It's a weird thing because obviously you want him out there to limit the turnovers possibly and keep the offense calm, but then N'Keal played so well last game.
You know, Mike's a table setter, and we've talked about Mike being a table setter so much on this show. Chris Finch talks about it. You need ways to get the ball out of Ant and Julius's hand. Mike's a way to do that, setting the team up. Like you said, Max, this is a win or die. Oof. So you got to put the guys out there that are going to help you in whatever best way. There's no tomorrow. Nothing's promised. So Mike might be a guy that you see out there tonight.
I hope so. And like you said, it's do or die for the Timberwolves. And I don't know about you, Parker. I'm way more into doing than I am into dying.
Right.
So let's cross our fingers that the Timberwolves can send it back to the Target Center for at least one more game and give us at least one more night to howl with hope, whether it's howling with the homies or hurting with the homies. We'll howl at y'all after the game, win or lose. But keep it locked here on the Fan for all of the Game 5 action. Wolves, Thunder, Game 5 Western Conference Finals going down in just about a half hour. This has been the pregame party presented by Youngstedts. Signing off for Parker Fox, I'm Max Fuller. Talk to y'all after the game. Peace.
Luther